right, well, everybody welcome back to Two Chicks and a Horror Flick. Except today, we are actually one chick, one dick, and a horror flick. And so that is Josh from Horror Movie Crew. Welcome, Josh.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I really liked the intro. I thought you did a great job.
Thank you. And to just kind of give a little background, Felicia is not joining us tonight just because she recently had a death in the family. And that's always, a tough thing to go through. So she just wasn't feeling like up to recording. So that is why she's not here. We're not breaking up. She's not gone. It's just a temporary thing. So that's what's going on tonight. And Josh and I are going to talk about Scream.
You know you're going to get a lot of questions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's, I think, partially why she was like, and I think Felicia also was like, I want people to know, like, not that I just was like, no way, I'm out of here, or like didn't want to do it, or I want people to know what the actual thing is so that they know. And I think that's nice.
That is nice. She's a very great person like that. She does things like that.
Very considerate.
Considerate. See, I couldn't think of the word. It's late here. You're gonna have to help me out a lot, I think.
Yeah, Josh, he's 2 hours ahead of me.
3.
Right?
I'm 3, I think. Well, I don't know where you're at. It's 10:25 here right now.
Yeah, it's 8:20 here. So you're 2 hours ahead of me. And then Felicia's another hour because Arizona, for some reason, doesn't do daylight savings time. So that's the difference. But
how forward thinking of them, huh?
I know it is sort of like antiquated. It's an antiquated idea, I guess, at this point. But it's like we should all just do or not do it, I think.
We need to pick one. It's like imperial and metric. Let's just pick one. Like, why do we need 2 different forms of measurements?
It's just fucking it all up. Let's just do one. You're confusing everybody, okay? Specifically us, okay? Felicia and I, we get confused. Even just the 2 of us all the time, so.
I'm with you. I have to know metric and imperial for work, so sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, can we just get this together? But what are you going to do? Thanks for having me, though. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. I can't remember if I said that you are from Horror Movie Crew. I'm sure I did, because now that's your full name, is Josh from Horror Movie Crew, is how I refer to you.
We've gotten super lazy. I've noticed a lot of other people have too, and we just call it HMC because it's so much easier than Horror Movie Crew podcast, where it's like, it's the HMC.
It just flows. It's easy to say, but I hear you guys say it probably a lot more than we do, so that makes sense.
We do, and Jess and I are huge fans of My Chemical Romance, and they were always MCR, so like, how can we be cool like MCR? We'll be the HMC.
I didn't know that. I didn't know you guys... We're into that. I was into that. Am into that, I guess. Still.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Were you going to go to the reunion show?
Not that level, no. I didn't even know there was a reunion show, so I'm not going to pretend.
It was pre-COVID. And then I think COVID happened so that people they do not want MCR to start up again. They were like, You know what? Release the COVID. And then they're like, we're stopping this shit in its tracks. So I blame it on them.
That's it. That was the single reason. But anyway, do you want to just talk a little bit? I mean, we're obviously podcast siblings, and people who listen to our episodes, I'm sure, have heard of you before. But just in case they haven't, and this might be like the first episode that they're coming to, why don't you tell everybody about Horror Movie Crew and what you guys have coming up soon?
Sure. So I am 1/3 of the Horror Movie Crew. The other 2 are Jess and Seth. We do episodes every week, sometimes 2 times a week, depending on how froggy we're feeling. But we get together and discuss a horror movie. We go scene by scene. We have a pretty cool rating system at the end. It's not, and I have to preface all of that by saying we are not industry or genre experts. In all honesty, we're pretty dumb. But we like watching horror movies. So our rating system, we call it a Stabby's rating, 0 to 5. Some movies get 0s, some movies get 5s. But it is how much we enjoyed watching the movie. It's not, we're not going to sit down and break it down by, it was a beautiful film and the writing was sensational. And we liked it or we didn't. Did we enjoy watching it or not? So that's where the rating comes in. Again, we're not genre experts. We just like talking horror movie. We're kind of a comedy podcast disguised as a horror movie podcast because really we're just sitting around and laugh the whole time and make fun of each other. And it's been described to me that when people listen to the podcast, they feel like they're sitting in a room just hanging out with us, basically shooting the shit, which is what we do. So if that's your thing, if that's what you're looking for, we're probably the podcast for you. So come hang out and have a couple laughs with us and a lot of drinks. We drink a lot.
We have that in common. These two podcasts, Two Chicks and Horror Movie Crew, we like the drinks. So speaking of that, great segue. What are you drinking, Josh?
Okay, so as you know, my go-to is always Miller Lite. I'm a huge Miller Lite guy. I talk about it every podcast. I generally drink it every podcast. But Abby had me working all day. We were getting the house ready for winter because we live in Ohio, and there you get a very, very small window of fall because it usually goes from, it did it this week, 90 degrees to 50 degrees real quick. So you got to get the pool closed. You got to get all the kids' outside stuff inside. You got to get the garage ready for the cars to be parked in there all winter because you don't want to be outside trying to shovel snow off your car. So I decided to skip the Miller Lights tonight, and I'm doing my liquor of choice, which is vodka, and I'm doing vodka sodas.
Oh, okay.
That was a long-ass answer for vodka soda, wasn't it?
No, it's great. You got to give the background. You know, we do that too.
Okay. All right. I'm just making sure. The beer would have been a lot, and I'd have been drinking it really fast. So I went with the more refreshing drink. In my Eric Church cup, of course. You know I'm a huge Eric Church fan, so.
I do now.
There you go.
Yes. Yeah. What kind of soda? Is it like Coke soda?
My favorite is... No. My favorite is just standard club soda, and then I put 2 limes in it, but I got really lazy today, and Abby scored these... They're called Limitless. It's basically like seltzer water. This one happens to be cherry lemon flavored, but
Chimin, yum.
And then my go-to vodka is Smithworks. That's Blake Shelton's vodka for all you people out there. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of a hillbilly, Tawny. I think you know this, but
I do. I think we have established that, especially in your love of Rob Zombie. And
yes,
I understand that. I don't know that I would myself say that I'm a hillbilly, but I just want to say that I'm like probably hillbilly adjacent. I might be.
That's okay.
You know, I don't know. Maybe the more, I was going to say trailer park version. That's not entirely true either. I don't know. Something in the realm.
I actually like that. I like that a lot.
Again, it's even adjacent from that, but close, you know? And I think that's why I appreciate and can understand Rob Zombie the way that you do. Like we definitely share that appreciation.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a big Rob Zombie. I've noticed a trend though. I only get asked on podcasts to talk about Rob Zombie and Scream usually. So I don't know. I
mean, they've got to be 2 of your favorite movies, right? Because you talk, the love that you have for them, I think is why people ask you on to talk about them.
That's true. That's probably true. I'm recording this weekend with a podcast on Elm Street guys. We're talking about Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. So it's a big weekend for me to talk about Scream, which is my favorite movie, and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, which is one of my favorite movies. So I don't know. It's a dream come true.
That's awesome. It's incredible. And that also is a great segue. Let's go ahead and just keep it moving into why did you pick this movie? Obviously, you just said it's your favorite, but just give us a quick rundown on why you want to continue to talk about it. Because you've talked about it a bunch, right?
I have. I've talked about it a ton. I think my opportunities to talk about it are running thin. That's why when Felicia asked me to come on and she was like, pick any movie you want. Initially, we were talking about me coming on and discussing the new Wrong Turn movie with you guys that you guys did not too long ago, because I love that. It's probably one of my favorite movies that has been made recently, honestly. And I think I expressed that to I told everybody I knew when that movie came out and I finally saw it, that they had to go see it, they had to see it, etc.
Yeah, you're the reason why we watched it.
That's true. And I think a lot of people didn't watch it because I am prone to do this too. If somebody tells me how great something is and that I have to watch it, I'll sometimes not do it because I feel like the build up has made it. I'm never going to achieve that level of excitement when I watch it because I feel like they just built it up too much. And I think I did that with Wrong Turn, 2020's Wrong Turn, or 2021. I don't remember when it came out, but recently. But nonetheless, so because I was listening to your guys' episode driving, because I had to do a sales seminar for work, so I was going to give a speech. I wouldn't call it a speech. I don't want to sound like I'm that important. I was talking at a sales conference, and I was driving, listening to your guys' episode on Wrong Turn, and she actually, so you guys dropped it, and she texted me or like Instagram me, and she was like, "Hey, we released the episode. Get through the first like hour of it, and I promise we start saying nice things." And I was like, "Oh no!" So I'm like driving. I'm like, I gotta turn this on. So I turn it on, and I'm like driving, having arguments with you guys in the car. I'm like, no, this, and I'm like, they can't hear me. So I'm like, voice to talk, like text, like Instagramming Felicia. I'm like, okay, first off, I like pause it. I'm like, first off, this point, she's like, you should come on and we should debate the movie. And I'm like, that's a great idea.
I love that idea still. And I think we should. Hold on that and do it again. Because I'm willing to listen to another perspective. And I haven't listened to your guys' episode yet because we've talked about this as a possibility. So I'm like, I don't want to be tainted by the conversation. I want to wait on it and do it all together. But I will say, since recording, I think I've softened on it a little bit. I think I've started to like it a little bit more because as I think about movies in certain contexts, like when I try to call back, when are people really good survivors? Or like, when do people really pretend well? This movie is coming back up for me. And so I think it's worth another conversation. And maybe we just hold on that, come back to it.
I'm willing to have that conversation because I think that movie it's so good. There's just so many levels to it, but that obviously not why we're here. Anyway, I was like, I don't want to come on and argue for an hour. But I was like, kind of jokingly, I was like, the only thing people want to hear me talk about is Rob Zombie or Scream. Have you guys done Scream yet? And she was like, actually, we haven't. And I was like, perfect. So that's how it came about.
Okay. Awesome.
Again, another long-winded answer from, I'm really bad about it. You're going to have to like cut me off at some point and be like, Josh, shut up.
No, I'm really long-winded answer over here too. Okay, so we're just going to be two long-winded answers back and forth. That's the format. It's long form. It's a podcast, y'all. If you weren't expecting that, why are you here? Like. I
agree.
Go to Reels. Go to Instagram Reels. Okay. It's like 30 seconds or something. 15 seconds. Okay, cool. So that's what we're going to talk about is Scream, obviously. Any other things that you want to plug in? Any other new things? Any things you've been watching that you want to talk about?
Sure. So the HMC we're doing, we rented a cabin. I think you knew this. We rented a cabin and stayed at a cabin for a weekend, and we did so for our Patreon members, we do extra episodes, one of which is called Coffee with the Crew. We just pick a random topic and we sit around usually in the morning and talk about it, and basically it's just back and forth. There's not really an outline. It's just kind of just really rough format, get together, and it could be about anything. But anyway, we decided to do a Coffee with the Crew on the Wrong Turn franchise. So rather than just sit out, watch them all ourselves, and then get together and talk about them, we rented a cabin for the weekend. We watched all the movies together, and then we did that Coffee with the Crew. But we also knocked out like 3 standard regular episodes that come out to the public on all major podcast platforms at the cabin. So we decided to just name, because we theme every month, so every month has a theme. So that theme was HMC's annual cabin trip. So then we decided to finish the month doing episodes that, I thought had cabins in them. And my dumbass picked Eden Lake, which does not have a cabin in it, by the way. I didn't realize that until like 3/4 of the way through the movie. I went online. I searched horror movies with a cabin, and it was like the 3rd one on the list. Now, I will be honest. I'm a huge Yellowstone fan. I don't know do you watch Yellowstone?
I have not yet, but it's been recommended to me, so it's on the list.
Okay, the actress that plays Beth Dutton is in Eden Lake. So I saw her. I was like, perfect. Cabin, Beth Dutton. Why wouldn't I pick this? No brainer. So I threw it out there. We watched it. It did not have a cat. There's a tent. So, what are you going to do? No
Close,
cabin.
I guess.
Anyway, they make tent cabins.
It's like a cloth cabin, I guess. If you want to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One man's tent is another man's cabin. That's what I say.
Yes, exactly.
So anyway, again, a long ass answer. So we finished the month doing cabin movies. We did Secret Window, Eden Lake, and I forget the other one. Wow, I'm a terrible podcast host. Tucker and Dale versus Evil. That's the other one we did.
Yes, I'm super excited to listen to that episode.
This part, exactly, dude. It's honestly, that movie fits us perfectly. But those will be out probably by the time this comes out. And then October, last year we did all Michael Myers Halloween movies for the whole month of October. This year we decided to get away from Michael Myers, and we are doing, we're calling it a witchy Halloween. So it's going to be all witch themed movies. So we're doing Practical Magic, Hocus Pocus, The Craft, and Lords of Salem. Obviously, I bet you can pick who chose Lords of Salem.
Yes.
So that's what we have coming up in October. One thing. Have you watched Malignant yet?
Yes, I have.
Dude, I watched Malignant. I'm a huge James Wan fan. I think the guy does no wrong. So Abby and I were so excited. Like, it came out on HBO. We're like, even better, because I'm a homebody. I don't like to leave the house. I travel for work, so I don't want to leave when I'm home. It's on HBO. We settle down, big bowl of popcorn. We turn it on, and 30 seconds in, we're like, oh no, this is going to be terrible. With the little guy with the arms.
I know. I was like, same thing for me. I was like, okay, this is getting really good reviews. People are talking about it. They're saying it's one of the best new horror movies. And so I fucking made Jade watch it with me. I was like, no. You need to watch this movie with me. I really want to watch it, but I don't want to watch it without you because it's getting all these good reviews, whatever. So over days. And then finally there was some deal that we made where I was like, okay, but you owe me a movie. And he was like, okay. So it was like, Sunday, we're going to go home. We're going to watch this movie. So we also do the same thing, settle in, start watching this movie. Same thing. We get minutes in and I'm like, oh no. I was like, okay, listen. I turned to him and I was like, I did read somebody said this was the funnest horror movie they've seen in a long time. So maybe we should just prepare ourselves for fun instead of scary horror. But then 20 minutes in, I was like, we're looking at each other and rolling our eyes. And I'm like, if you want to leave, I regret my choices and you can leave. You don't have to watch the rest of this unless you really want to. We finished it, but holy shit, I was not a fan.
No, me neither. We pushed through and we finished it because at certain points, I looked at Abby and I'm like, this can't get any worse.
Right.
And then I'll be damned if they didn't prove me wrong because it just kept going.
Yeah, I said the same thing. I was like, I turned to Jade and I was like, this is getting worse. Because I kept being like, maybe it'll revive itself. I was like, this is just getting worse. Yeah, I don't know. That was a divisive one. It's a divisive movie. Okay, are we ready to get into talking about Scream?
Let's
are you
do
ready?
It.
Okay, I'm ready.
That's why I'm here.
That is why you're here. That's true. Okay, so let me pull up my little notes. So we're talking about Scream, obviously, from 1996. The director was Wes Craven, and the writer was Kevin Williamson, which I feel like is an important note. And I have a question for you about that, Josh, later. Don't let me forget, because sometimes I forget.
All right, I won't.
I'm going to run through the cast. So we have Drew Barrymore as Casey, Roger Jackson as the voice over the phone, Nev Campbell as Sydney, Skeet Ulrich as Billy, Courtney Cox as Gail Weathers, W. Earl Brown as Kenny, Rose McGowan as Tatum, David Arquette as Deputy Dewey, Matthew Lillard as Stuart, or Stu, and Jamie Kennedy as Randy. This is a big cast. This is probably the biggest list I've done in a long time.
It's a great cast, which is a note I have later about not just the cast, but the characters. Because when we get into the writing section, probably I would imagine. But yeah, they did a great job of casting the right people for the right roles, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so the budget was 14 to 15 million, and box office was 173 million. So really big. I also think I read somewhere that it was like the 20th highest grossing horror movie, slasher film. I can't remember the specifics, but
probably horror, because I think for up until 2018, I think it was the highest grossing slasher film until Halloween 2018 came out.
Okay, interesting.
I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. I oftentimes throw out inaccurate facts, but they sound good at the time.
It's fucking hard to keep them all in your head, you know? So I get that.
I know. Look, I have like a very small head. Like, what am I supposed to do with this thing?
Okay, IMDb gave it a 7.3 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 79%, and 83% of Google users liked this movie. Okay. Are you ready for 2 Minutes with Tawny?
I can't wait for 2 minutes with Tawny.
I put a little bit of extra effort into this one, specifically because you were the one who said, keep that name. 2 Minutes with Tawny. So I'm excited. I felt indebted to you for that reason.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I'm going to sit back and shut up.
And I did time it, and it's over 2 minutes, but it's like 2:30-ish. So we're going to call it 2-ish minutes with Tawny.
But it's Scream, so why not?
You know, why not? And I felt like there was a lot that I couldn't leave out, but I was trying not to get too detailed. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see how it lands here. Sydney Prescott is a teen girl just trying to live her life after the brutal murder of her mother. When 2 teens from her high school are killed, she's understandably a little on edge since her father is gone on business. She receives a phone call from an unknown man who threatens her. She hangs up the phone and tries to lock all the doors, but she's not quick enough. She's attacked by a man in a black robe and with the classic white ghost face mask. She runs upstairs and sends a message to the police from her computer. As the police show up, so does her boyfriend Billy, who has a cell phone on him. She immediately suspects him and he's arrested. She goes to stay at her friend Tatum's house and receives a call from the same man there, leading her and the cops to believe Billy could not be the murderer. Because of the attacks, classes are suspended, which obviously calls for a party at Stu's house. Sydney goes upstairs to talk with Billy, and Tatum goes to the garage for beers. She's attacked by the killer there and gives him a good fight before trying to escape through the dog door. Unfortunately, though, this dog door is in the garage door, so the killer raises it up, crushing Tatum. Inside, the party is watching Halloween, a horror classic, while Randy gives them a rundown of horror movie rules when he receives a phone call telling him Principal Himbry, which is a very difficult name to say, is dead and hung from the football goal post. This was a moment that I wrote, and I was like, I don't even know if those are the right words. I'm obviously not into sports. Is that right?
Field goal post. Yeah, you nailed it.
Field goal post. Okay. Yes. Most of the partygoers peel out to go see his body because why not? Leaving Sydney, Billy, Stu, Randy, Gail Weathers, a local TV reporter, who's there hoping to get some sweet footage of more murders, I guess, and Deputy Dewey, who's there to keep an eye on Sid and doing the worst job of that. After Sydney and Billy have sex, the killer stabs him and Sydney gets out of the house. The killer murders Kenny, the beloved cameraman, shoots Randy, and stabs Dewey in the back. Sydney takes Dewey's gun and locks Stu and Randy outside while they accuse each other of being the killer. Billy comes to and takes the gun from Sydney, but that sucks since he actually is the killer, kind of, because he's one of the killers. Turns out Billy and Stu are working together, and they are responsible for Sydney's mom's murder too. They explain their plan to kill her, frame her father, and be the only survivors. Sydney gets away from them, crushes Stu with a TV, and Gail Weathers shoots Billy. Randy, Gail, and Sydney stand over Billy's body, and Randy explains this would be the time that the killer would get back up for one last scare, which Billy does, and Sydney shoots him in the head and says, "Not in my movie." The end.
You did a great job.
Thank you. I do feel
2 minutes with Tawny.
I do feel the need to say the end every time, just so you know it's over.
I do that too. I also say the end at the end of our discussion. So it just so everybody knows that's the end of what you had to say. It's like when you're talking on a radio, you say over.
Exactly. Otherwise, it's kind of left open and there's this awkward silence. And so I'm just starting to be like, the end.
Well, the great thing about podcasts is you can cut all that out.
That's true. I will say that 9 times out of 10, Felicia is like, great job. I always cut that out because I'm like, I don't know. It feels weird. I'm like.
And then I did it.
I'm going to leave that one in. I'm going to leave all this in.
I told you, Felicia and I are on the same wavelength sometimes. So that's probably what it is.
Exactly. So I don't know if you want to go first, Josh. Obviously, you love this movie. How did you feel about this movie? Or should I go first? I don't know.
What do you want to do? Do you want to go ladies first or I can go first?
Actually, I want you to go first. You go first. Yep.
Okay. All right. Obviously, I love this movie. It's my favorite movie. The problem is you're going to have to cut me off from talking about the movie because I do like it so much. So I remember the first time I saw the movie. I remember where I was at. I remember how much it made me. It's a movie that got me into horror. So there's like nostalgia tied to it. But then when you look at what the movie did for the horror genre, it like opens up a whole nother love of the movie for me because I feel like without this movie, I think horror moving forward from 1996 would be a lot different if it were not for this movie. And people may laugh, I don't care. I think this movie saved not just the slasher genre, but I think that it saved where horror was heading, which in my opinion was not a great direction.
Okay.
So obviously I love this movie. It's a movie, the rewatchability even in 2021. Yeah, it's a little dated when you look at their clothing. Some of the look of the movie is a little dated, but so my nephew is just now getting into horror. We text back and forth all the time about horror, but he really liked the new Fear Street movies.
Oh yeah.
So I'm trying to get permission slip signed from Abby's sister to let him watch Scream. So I'm excited for that. And I just think it's a movie that, yeah, it's a little dated, but through time, I mean, we're in 2021 now, it's still such a great movie, and the things hold up, and the way that it was meta, and again, it wasn't the first meta horror movie, but I think it's the one that did it the best. I really think Wes Craven's New Nightmare was the building blocks or the trial run for Scream. Because if you go back and watch that movie, there's a lot of stuff you can kind of go back and forth between Scream and New Nightmare, but Scream it's the one that knocked it out of the park, in my opinion. So yeah, I guess I'll kick it over to you, but cause I could talk about it all night, but I love the movie. I think it's a perfect movie, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and that's something special. I think the first movie, the movie that got you into horror, I think is super special for everyone who is a fan of this genre. I can totally identify with that. But I do have a question for you. Where do you think horror was headed that was going to be a bad place?
So I think when you look at it, so the slasher genre, of course, this is the great debate, right? What was the first slasher movie? Some people say Black Christmas. Some people say, I forget the name of the movie, but it was way before Black Christmas. But then you have Texas Chainsaw. You had A Nightmare on Elm Street. You
Halloween.
have obviously Halloween. Exactly. So you have a Child's Play. You have all these movies, right? But at that point, when Scream came out in 96, Friday the 13th had 9 movies. Halloween had 6 at that point. Elm Street had 7, I think. Texas Chainsaw had 4. Your favorite movie is Child's Play, is it not?
Not my favorite movie. It's definitely my favorite of the slasher franchises, though. Yes.
Okay. I knew you were a big Chucky fan. But then again, Chucky, it was 3 of those. But you look at early 90s horror and through the 80s, I think that the slasher genre had done everything it could do. There was nothing left to do. And honestly, Candyman came out in 90 or 91. And it's a great movie. It's a good movie. I haven't seen the new one, but then you had Silence of the Lambs. So it switched from slasher. The slasher genre had really, in my opinion, run its course, and you were getting into these psychological. Not really. Silence of the Lambs is a horror movie, in my opinion, but I think that is more or less where the genre was heading. I think it was stale, and honestly, I think Wes Craven knew that, and that's why along with and I think Kevin Williamson does not get enough credit for this movie. I'm a huge Kevin Williamson fan.
Yeah.
Obviously he wrote it, but nonetheless, I think he and Wes worked really well together. And I think that this movie really put the slasher, the horror genre back in the mainstream limelight. 'Cause I really think that it was just stale, honestly. And then you look at the movies that came after it and how it impacted the genre moving forward with all of the Scream ripoff movies, right? So like I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend,
Scary Movie, which is a direct
yes,
franchise ripoff of this. It feels like.
Exactly. And you look at their formula and everybody tried to recreate, even Halloween, arguably the biggest slasher horror movie franchise of all time. They tried to do Scream, Halloween H2O. Kevin Williamson had a hand in writing the script for Halloween H2O. So it just shows you how impactful that movie was moving forward. For Child's Play, Bride of Chucky, very Scream-esque. It brings a lot of that meta, comedy into it that Scream had. And then you look at, we just did this episode, The Faculty, also a Kevin Williamson movie, but very Scream-esque. So I think that they did a good job of kind of reigniting the horror slasher really genre when it was really stale, and I think it was headed to a really bad place, in my opinion. What do I know? Okay.
I think that's a conversation for another time, but we'll put a hold on that. For me, overall, I got to be honest, I have dreaded the day that we talk about Scream. I've been very scared because I know people are ultra super fans of this movie.
Yes.
And it's not that I really hate this movie. I think I have always just felt pretty neutral. And I think that's where I'm coming into this conversation is I'm still pretty neutral. I kind of like it and I get why people really like it. But the problem is I missed the fucking boat. I missed the boat on it because of my own personal experience, which is I had a childhood friend who had told me when I was pretty young that this was really, really scary. And she had explained the first scene to me. And I must have been a kid. I was really young. And she was like, yeah, all this stuff happens. And then he hangs this girl up inside out for her parents to see her, which isn't technically correct, but it's one of those things that you can tell got mistranslated from a kid, because later in the movie they say he put her insides on the outside, and she didn't literally mean skinned her, but that's what I imagined in my little kid brain. Is I was like, oh, I'm gonna see a skinned body hanging there, and that is fucking terrifying, and I do not want to watch that. So I avoided this movie. I didn't watch it for years. I think I had seen scenes here and there of the movie, but I had never sat down and watched it all through until a few years ago. And I just fucking missed the boat. And it sucks. I wish I would have seen it way before, because I feel like my experience of Scary Movie and the parody and the constant making fun of Ghostface as a killer really tainted my experience. But yeah. I will say this last rewatch for this episode, I feel like I've started to cultivate an understanding and an appreciation that I didn't have before. So I still don't love it. It's not one of my faves. And also the slasher genre is just not one of my fave genres. I just can't. I don't know. It's just kind of boring to me. And I'm sure people I'm not even coming in to be divisive on this movie, but I'm sure people are going to fucking roast me for just being neutral on Scream. But that's kind of where I'm at.
You're being honest. That's all you can be, right?
Yeah.
So do you think I think this goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of the podcast about Wrong Turn. I think when people put it on such a pedestal that it's almost impossible for you to get there. So I feel like maybe that's what happened with the movie for you, at least.
Yeah, I definitely think that's part of it. It's it is put so much on a pedestal and people talk about it all the time. And it's so many people's favorites that I feel like I hate it, but I don't hate it. am neutral. And so, you know, the gap there is larger because so many people fucking love it. And it is this like, it changed the genre and it's so fucking smart. And like, I get that. I get it.
Yeah.
It's not one of my favorites. But I do see, again, upon this last rewatch, I started to realize like, this is what people talk about in relation to Cabin in the Woods. And I actually think this movie did a much better job than Cabin in the Woods. But I kind of notoriously also don't like Cabin in the Woods. So that's another one of those like divisive, unpopular opinions.
Okay. I do enjoy Cabin in the Woods. It's not one of my favorites. I forget what I rated it. We had Chuck from Chuck Goes to the Movies on and we did that movie. But
do you think this movie does it better? This movie,
of course, it's my favorite. I think this movie does everything correctly, better than anything else, and I think it's been tried. It's tried to have been ripped off a lot of times, and nobody's been able to do it because it's just so perfectly laid out. And then, again, not to go off on a tangent, but you look at the sequels. Scream 2 is a fucking great movie. They redid it. They freaking recaptured it, and then Scream 3, Scream 4 also great. But that's a story for another time. I think it's funny what you said because I've always said this about Scream. And tell me if you think I'm wrong. Be honest. But do you remember when Blink-182 came out?
I don't know if I remember when they came out, but keep going.
Okay, so in the music scene, Blink-182 was this punk band. They were up and coming, etc. Well, they made an album, Enema of the State, and everybody loved it. Like you had it, and it wasn't those people's music
the glove
anymore.
One? The nurse with the glove on the cover.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was Travis Barker's first album with Blink-182, and it became. They weren't those. You know when like there's an indie band and like that small group of people love that band and they like don't want the world to know about it because it's their band, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that was what happened with Blink-182. And they got huge, arguably one of the biggest rock bands at the time. And like the football teams loved them, the basketball team, the jocks loved them. It was called jock rock, right? And while they're this amazing, really talented, great band, their image kind of got diminished over time because they were like everybody, they were so mainstream now. Not anything of their own doing. It's just because people like their music.
Yeah.
I feel like loosely you can compare that to Scream with what you were kind of just saying, right? Is that everybody loves Scream. It's like, what's your favorite scary? Oh, Scream. Scream's my favorite scary. Well, why is Scream? And not nobody, a lot of people can talk intelligently about Scream and tell you what they like about it, the things that it did for the genre, etc. But I feel like it's that Blink-182 effect, right? It's the easy answer. It's the, oh yeah, Scream's my favorite movie. And then how do you argue with that, right? Like, well, okay, yeah, it really is a great movie. Well, you don't think so, but
I think it's a good movie. I think
it's fair.
Yeah. It's just not personally my fave. That's all. But I see what you're saying.
Change it. I feel like you're gonna really love it by the time we get done here.
If you can talk me into it, I'm here for it. Because like I said, I fucking missed the boat and I'm sad about it. I actually really wish that I would have experienced this the way that it was intended to be experienced. You know what I mean? And I'm just gonna tell you, I called my friend Paige, who was on the podcast for our Misery episode. And Scream is also excellent podcast, by the way. Thank you. And I called her and I was like, tell me everything you love about Scream because I need to be convinced. I need to be convinced of this. And she did. And I was like, okay, I get it. And same thing. Like, I think a lot of it comes down to personal experience. She was like, this is the first horror movie I ever was able to watch. Like, so it was super exciting. And it feels like it's the introduction into the genre. I get all that. And I just fucking missed it.
Yeah, that sucks. It's the only thing I can think of. But I do have one question. Film or movie?
For this one? Oh, fuck. I don't know. That's actually kind of hard. For me personally, I'd say a movie. But for the world at large, I'd absolutely say a film because of how much of a big deal it is. And for people, you know, how much it revitalized the genre, like you're talking about. Like, I can't deny that it made a big impact. And it's also like masterfully done. I think there are a couple things that I'm walking away from rewatching this time and doing the research and everything that made me feel a little bit differently. And this is one of the things is like the respect I think that Wes Craven has for his audience. And I actually watched some interviews with him where he talks about this. Like, you have to know that your audience is smart. They're not stupid. But I feel like this is something that comes through in the movie, is like the poking fun at the viewers and the genre as a whole, but very respectfully. Whereas people say that with Cabin in the Woods, and I know this is the second time I'm comparing them, and I'll stop at some point. But I don't get that same vibe from Cabin in the Woods. I get that from this movie 100-fold. So like, I respect that he respects the genre and the audience.
I like that, because I think that when you watch the movie, and you said you had some references later, but there's just so like I've watched this movie. I've watched it 3 or 4 times a year, and every time you watch it, you gain something else where they've masterfully put it in there and just like slid something in. You're like, oh, they're referencing this movie. But again, back to what I was saying, I think that Wes Craven knew that. So when they were doing, again, Kevin Williamson had a huge hand in this. He wrote the script, but nonetheless, this is almost like, and maybe this is over the top, but whatever, that's fine. I'm prone to do that. I feel like this was like the ode to the slasher genre. Like, hey, we've done everything we can do. We're going to go into this and we're going to make the Randy's rules. You got the rules for a slasher movie. Here's what you do. Here's what you don't do. Here's how you survive. If you break these rules, you die. It's in every slasher movie.
Yep.
And they make light of that, all while, which we can talk about later, but they have these characters that almost every character in this movie reference a horror movie. So everybody in this movie is aware of horror movies, that not that they're in a horror movie, like that Scary Movie, right? They're legitimately in a horror movie.
Yeah.
And they're aware of it for the most part, but they make reference and they're aware of the genre. And like, as a kid watching that movie, loving the horror genre because of this movie, I'm like, and even going into it as a young person watching the movie, not knowing all of that history, I feel like it made me want to learn what they were talking about when they made certain references. So yeah. I also think that is something that I really like about the movie, is that it engulfs the horror genre, and they say and they reference so many cool things that if you're not paying attention, you might miss it. And over the years, like I said, I watch it and I catch something different every time, which I think is fun, which makes it the rewatchability really high for it, which is another great thing about a movie, is the rewatchability of it.
That's true. And I did write down as one of my personal notes, there is countless references. Whatever. You know what I'm saying? There's countless references to other horror movies. And it's not just the slasher genre. It's all horror movies in general. You've got The Bad Seed, Psycho, like Silence of the Lambs, like anything and everything is referenced in this movie in a very well done, non-cringy way. And I don't think I really had picked up on that until this rewatch, like just how often it happens and how not stupid it is. I mean, I think there's a couple times that maybe, like, I don't know, maybe questionable. The fact that Sydney Prescott says she doesn't like horror movies and then also references a bunch of horror, I'm like, okay, but whatever, I'll forgive it. I'm not mad at that.
But there's people that don't like horror movies that have watched them with their friends, or
that's true.
That you know about them, right?
You'd know about them, yeah, for sure. And if you have a boyfriend that's super into horror, just playing the devil's advocate, maybe you would know more about it and you'd be able to reference it with him. So sure, but I think I do overall think it's well done. But I do want to go back to the Kevin Williamson versus Wes Craven thing, because I think this is just an interesting thing. And I have the question for you is, like, who do you think deserves the credit? Obviously, both of them did really big jobs, but I feel like most people talk about Wes Craven, but it was actually Kevin Williamson who wrote the whole fucking thing. Like, I don't know. I mean, right. Wes had to get the vibe. He had to get the tone, but
I think it's a collaboration. Without either of them, you wouldn't have the movie you have. So it took both of them. I don't think it's a one versus the other thing. I think that you require both of them to have this movie. Which you may have it in your trivia, but like, I Know What You Did Last Summer was written. Kevin Williamson wrote that before Scream, and he couldn't get anybody to pick it up. So he then wrote Scream. It gets picked up, and then immediately I Know What You Did Last Summer, it gets picked up. But I feel like with Wes's background and everything that Wes brought to the table, and with Kevin Williamson's writing style, it was right for the time. Kevin Williamson writes arguably really good teenagers. So you look at Dawson's Creek, you look at Scream, you look at The Faculty, you look at all these things. That's what he
Diaries.
does, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Exactly. That's what he's good at. And then I think, and again, I'm not a huge Nightmare on Elm Street fan. I catch a lot of shit for it, but I'm just not. I think they're laughable. I honestly think that they were the blueprints for Scream, and Scream is what did it. If Wes had Kevin Williamson on A Nightmare on Elm Street, I don't know that it would. I think I'd probably like it a lot more. So for me, and I'm not a huge Wes Craven fan. I get shit for that too. Scream's my favorite, arguably my favorite franchise. I hate putting a tag on that, but I'd say it's probably arguably my favorite franchise. But I'm not a huge Wes Craven fan. I think without Kevin Williamson, this movie isn't what it is. And I think you see that with Scream 3, because Williamson wrote 1, 2. He wrote the script for 3 that got changed, and then he came back for 4. So I don't think you have it without both, which I don't want to.
That makes sense.
I'm so excited for the new one. I think you
what's
have to have
new
both
one?
of them.
I don't know what's happening with that.
Scream 5?
Yeah.
Oh, it comes out.
Who's on it? Anybody?
Oh, yes.
Well,
the guys that did Ready or Not. The guys that did Ready or Not are doing the new Scream movie.
Okay.
So, and again, we were on your guys' episode for Ready or Not, right?
I think we might have come on yours for that one.
Either way, we did it together.
Yeah, we can't remember.
I am a huge Ready or Not fan. I think that movie is amazing. So that's when I was like, when I found out the same guys were doing Scream 5, I was like, oh, I'm so in. But yeah, so it comes out in February of 2022. But
did he write that one too?
Kevin?
Yeah.
No, I do not believe he did.
Okay.
I don't know if he had a hand in it or whatnot. I think it's all the guys from Ready or Not. But seeing with what they did with that movie, I'm really excited. But back to your original question, I don't know that it's one versus the other. I think you have to have both of them to make it work.
I guess Bob Weinstein approached of Miramax Robert Rodriguez, Danny Boyle, George A. Romero, and Sam Raimi to direct. Kevin Williamson said that they didn't get it, and he was really concerned that having read the script, many of the directors believed the film to be purely comedic. And I guess Rodriguez ended up directing the in-universe film Stab. I haven't actually seen any of the sequels, so I don't personally know, but that was just a little tidbit.
What?
Mm-hmm.
You've never seen any of the sequels?
Mm-mm. I think it's about time, though. I'm gonna do it. Okay, so I feel like we got kind of caught up in a little bit of trivia right away, but just what do you want to start with for your own personal bullet points on this movie?
Oh, Lord, where do I start? Actually, let's segue off of that Kevin Williamson thing, because I think that, again, without Kevin Williamson, you wouldn't have this movie, but I think you need both of them. But let's look at, I think one thing that gets overlooked with this movie, and that unless you do a deep dive, you don't really catch it, is all of the subplots in the movie. So yeah, you have the main movie, right? There's this ghost face killer terrorizing this town of Woodsboro. But when you really dig into it, the whole movie is started because of Maureen Prescott. So you have Sydney's mom, who was murdered. Almost the anniversary is coming up. Okay, so that's one plot line. The second plot line is Sydney had to testify at the trial against Cotton Weary, who everybody thinks killed her mother. And her testimony, seeing him leave in that jacket, is what put him away. Then you bring in a third plot line of Gail Weathers, who is this local reporter. She wants to make it big in Hollywood, etc. She did the book on Cotton and firmly, in my opinion, believes that he did not do it based on his story, etc. Well, she's there covering, back to the first plot line, the Woodsboro murders of this Ghostface, and now her and Sydney have to interact, right? Then you throw in, and honestly, it has nothing to do with that first, second, or third plot line. Sydney's dad's missing. on top of all of this, so then you have, again, these 3 plot lines. Now Sydney's dad's missing, and then you throw another plot line in of just normal high school, everyday Dawson's Creek bullshit that Kevin Williamson is great at writing, all interwoven into this one story. And on top of it, they made it a whodunit movie. So it's not just like a Halloween where you know the killer's Michael Myers. You don't really know why he's doing what he's doing, but he is. You've got Jason, who just likes to kill camp counselors. You've got Freddy, who haunts you in your nightmares, because that whole freaking convoluted storyline where his mom was a nun who got raped, and he was the child of the rape, but then he hurt kids, so the parents killed him.
Spoiler
you got this
alert.
whodunit story. Yeah, sorry if you've never seen Nightmare on Elm Street 1 through 8. Like, that's what happens. But you've got this completely different storyline, and it's a whodunit storyline, which is different from the slasher genre of everything that came before it. So you've got all these different storylines interwoven, and like any one of those could be their own movie, right? But they have done it all together, and the way it's written and the way they were able to do all this is fascinating. On top of all of the movie references and Randy's rules, and then the first scene, in my opinion, which was where I ideally wanted to start, but is, in my opinion, one of the greatest opening scenes of not just a horror movie, but a movie in general. The way it's laid out, the way it's shot, the way that you've bought into Drew Barrymore being the main character of this movie, and then within 12 minutes, she's dead. Like, fascinating. But all of that is because of the writing. And again, I think without Kevin Williamson's writing, you don't have you need both of them, Wes and Kevin Williamson. But without Kevin Williamson's writing and the way that he's able to intertwine all these stories, and I just think it's brilliant. Honestly, it's the only thing I come up with is that it's brilliant, and I don't think you've seen anything like it since this movie.
I agree that it does not feel messy. It's like, I think I'm a real stickler when it comes to that shit. If you throw too much stuff in a movie, like, I fucking hate it. If it gets like muddy and it's too confusing to follow, I really don't like that. I don't feel that way about this movie at all. So I think they do a very good job of, like you're saying, like weaving all of these plot lines in. But let's do it. Let's go back to that first scene and let's talk about it. Drew Barrymore, you're already there. You love it. She dies.
Right. Like, what? Who does that?
Yeah. I will say that my second note is that it is very well telegraphed. I don't know if that's the right word, but I guess maybe choreographed is a better word, because I feel like the way that things happen and the way that she's like moving through the house and he is moving through the house and the parents are moving through and they get distracted, you know, like, isn't there a moment where it's almost like they were about to do something, but they get distracted and go, I don't remember exactly. But all of this I feel like was really well choreographed. My only problem with this scene is that I don't love Drew Barrymore's performance in it. I think it's not great in certain moments. And I don't know if it's that I feel like she's overacting or underacting. Like, I don't know what the scale is, but there's something there that doesn't hit for me. And I love Drew Barrymore. So it's not that I don't like her. It's just there's something about this performance that I'm not sold on.
See, I would argue I really enjoy the acting because I think she embodies how a high school kid in that time, in that situation, would react. Because obviously you're going to think it's a joke. That's what we did when I was in school. That's what we did. We hung out, we watched scary movies, pop popcorn. Our parents were out doing whatever, and we just hung out and we were by ourselves. And at the time, honestly, that was so terrifying that somebody would call you and do that. One thing I really like is that I guess, and this could be complete BS, it's just crap you read on the internet, right? Is that she didn't want to meet Roger Jackson in person. She just wanted to hear him on the phone. So they actually had him in a tent, like away from where she was filming when they were talking. So she couldn't actually see what he looked like. But I don't know. I don't hate the way she acted. I think she did a great job of, again, embodying the high school aspect of it, but I also think like she looks terrified the whole time, honestly, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think it's like her actions that bother me, because I agree that all those feel pretty natural. Like, she is like, okay, you're fucking with me at first, then I'm gonna go with it. Now I'm scared. I like all of that. That's fine. I think it's like the delivery of the lines. There's something in that just feels not, it just doesn't connect quite there for me. And I think, part of the other thing for me, again, is that I cannot take this first scene very seriously. Just with him calling and the voice and all of that. Again, this is one of those things that I wish I would have caught right as it came out, or as soon as I was old enough to watch this movie, which, let's be real, was pretty soon after, because I was already watching really scary shit as a tiny child. But like, it's just not scary. And I try so hard to watch this and put myself in the perspective of like, so I feel like I can kind of understand why this was good. But I just, myself watching it, I'm like, it's just not, until he is like chasing her down. I like all of that. Yeah. That part is good. Something that I want to say as a pro is that I do appreciate the teen dynamic. I think there is something good about the realism of these characters and how they would interact with each other. Even now, I feel like it's fresh. I feel like this is how teenagers talk to each other. I liked that. I liked that dialogue.
Yeah, I think that having Skeet and Nev work together previously probably definitely helped. But I think their core group, they had a really good core group, and those actors weren't who they are today before that movie came out. It's like Nev Campbell wasn't huge. Skeet Ulrich wasn't huge. Matthew Lillard wasn't huge. I don't remember if Rose McGowan was or not, but she definitely became huge after the movie. But they all did. And it was like Courtney Cox. I don't know if she had done Friends yet. I was never into Friends, so sorry.
I think she did, because part of the reason why she wanted to do this is because it was so contrary to what she had done before.
That's another talking point I have and that's a great segue, is the characters. Like, look, what other movie has this many likable characters, and honestly, that don't get killed off? So, and spoiler alert, sorry, I know you've never seen the sequels, but you have that core group of characters through the majority of the sequels that keep coming back. And honestly, if you were to kill them off, I don't know that the sequels would have done as well. So I think they did a great job of each movie. It made you feel like that character could eat it, but they end up not. So,
okay.
Well, then you have like Dewey, who you watch this movie, he gets stabbed at the end and comes back in the second one with a limp. But no, there's no other movies that have characters that are this iconic right in the first movie, in my opinion, of course. But
I agree. There were a lot of likable characters. And obviously, like Sidney Prescott, you're immediately like, yeah, she's great. She's smart. She makes good decisions. I think my only aversion to her is that everybody is sort of like, yeah, number one final girl. Like, so it's overhyped a little bit. Like, I'm not going to put myself in the camp of people that's like, that's my favorite final girl, because that just wouldn't be honest. But she is smart. I mean, I don't dislike her. She's very smart. She makes great decisions. She's very like on guard, even immediately she suspects her boyfriend. But I think my favorite characters for some reason are Dewey and the camera guy. Like, I don't know why. Kenny is just one of my favorite characters through the entire movie. I feel such a, what's the word? He's so endearing. I don't know. But I don't dislike any of them, except this is probably my biggest con to this entire movie. I actually really dislike Matthew Lillard in this movie.
Really?
And it's
what do you dislike about him?
I like Matthew Lillard. Let me just say that for the record. But now I'm starting to question, actually, like, do I love Matthew Lillard? I don't know, because I feel like my introduction to him and why I love him is 13 Ghosts. And I'm half afraid to go back and watch that and have it be garbage. And also, I feel like maybe I should, just to see if I remember him being as awesome as I think he is. But in this movie, he way overacts. And that's just a killer for me personally.
Okay.
I don't like it when people are way over the top. And I feel like all throughout the movie, he is straight up annoying. And like, again, in talking with my friend Paige, because again, I was trying to like, just so you know, I was trying to call in some backup for you. Like, I was like, I need somebody else's like 2 cents to make me feel better about this movie. So Paige was like, yeah, like, who would you like? He balances out the seriousness of the other characters, which I agree with. And I think that's a very good point. And I don't know who would be a better person in that role, but I just think he's too much for me. Like, it just annoys me. He's just constantly like yelling. That's another thing that I fucking hate. I hate when shows or movies or whatever is just like constant yelling. That's like one of my things that if it's that, I fucking hate it.
See, I like Matthew Lillard a lot in this movie. I think that he also, like Drew Barrymore as Casey Becker, you had him in school. You know you did. You had that kid in school. That annoying, over the top, always on kid. That was him.
And guess what?
I think
I hated him.
Go ahead. Of course you did. But also, I think they did that because you don't see that person as a threat. Like, did you think that Stu would? I mean, you may have already known going into it, but like, I wouldn't have thought Stu was the killer. It's like. But you also have that comic relief in Randy, which Jess and Seth both hate Randy.
I love Randy.
Stand
okay.
See, there you go. So, and they love Stu. So, like, I think it's, again, correct me if I'm wrong. If you knew that person in a previous life or previously in your life, you know who that person is and you relate that actor or that character to that person in your actual life that you knew that acted that way. They hated Randy. I love Randy. I also love Stu. But I think that it's hard to overcome that. And yeah, Matthew Lillard, but I think he acts that way in all of his movies, but I've only known him as Stu, the guy in 13 Ghosts, and then Shaggy. So, like, that's just who he is. I think he's big and goofy.
I think it doesn't have anything to do with like who I've experienced. I think it's the overacting for me because I am annoyed with Randy in the beginning. Like when he's doing the voices, I'm like, shut the fuck up. But by the end of the movie, he sort of tones it down. And now he's just the rules guy. And I like that. That's cool.
Okay.
If honestly there is anything that I could change about this movie, it would be that. I would pluck Matthew Lillard out and put somebody else in that maybe would turn it down from fucking 12 to like a 9.
Oh, man, I like him. See, I like him. I think he's one of the I think he makes the movie, especially at the big reveal at the end, which is another talking point, but oh my gosh.
I mean, I like the reveal, but like, I don't know, the tone of it fucking kills me. It's too, I don't know. I don't like it. It just, he's like, I'm fucking dying here, man. And like the Houston, we have a problem.
Are we jumping to the end? Do we want to go to the end right away?
I mean, why not? We're talking about Matthew Lillard and the overacting. We'll jump around. We'll come back.
Okay. That scene at the end is so great. It's just as good as the beginning. Like Sydney has sex with Billy and then it's revealed that he is the killer, right? And you're like, crap, it was Billy. Then all of a sudden there's 2 killers. Unheard of. There's never 2 killers. Why would there be 2 killers? And it's Billy and Stu. And then this whole time they've been talking about motives. And Randy is the guy, he's like, it's the millennium. You don't need a motive. Like, motives are out, right? So anyway, you think, and again, I think the movie did a great job throughout the entire movie of masking just how into horror movies Billy is, because he makes a bunch of references throughout the movie, but it's like a red herring, basically, about who's into horror movies. Because, like, you are watching Randy over here, who you know is your horror movie guy, because he's making all these references, etc., talking about the movies, giving the whole history of Jamie Lee Curtis. But if you listen to Billy Loomis talk, he is just as in tune with horror movies as Randy is, but it's so masked because you're watching Randy.
Right.
So it makes sense that he's the killer, especially at the end when he quotes Psycho. But then there's 2 killers and you're like, I didn't see this coming. And then you watch the 2, right? And they're talking about motives. The movies made me do it, etc. Stu's motive is that he gives in to peer pressure, whatever. And then when Billy reveals his true motive, which is that his father was sleeping with Maureen, Sydney's mom, and that's why his mom left him, they show Matthew Lillard's face, and you can tell based off how he's acting in that scene, he had no fucking clue what was going on. He had no idea that that's why Billy was doing this. And honestly, I think in that moment, that's when he realized I'm a puppet in this whole thing, because he was.
That's a great point, and not something that I saw his face, and I picked up that there was something happening there, but I don't think I fully chased that idea down to that conclusion. And so that's interesting. I have not thought about that before.
I think, life according to Josh, I think Billy used Stu the whole time. And when they're cutting each other, you notice Billy goes way too aggressive, right? Goes way too... And Stu says, "You cut me too deep, I'm bleeding out." He did it on purpose. I think he was going to blame the entire thing on Stu.
Okay. That's a whole different perspective. That's interesting. I still don't like Matthew Lillard's delivery of the lines, but I don't have a problem with the reveal, the ending part, the plot of them both, and blah, blah, none of that bothers me. It's just his delivery of the way that he is. It's too fucking much, and I'm like, are you going to be joking now that you've gotten stabbed 2 times and you think you might die? You're going to be like, "Houston, we have a problem"? No, that's not what you're going to say. It's not.
I don't know, because he's so dumb through the whole movie. Because if you remember when you go back to the first scene where you see them all together in front of that fountain, and Randy calls him out. He's like, "Well, didn't you date Casey Becker? And then she dumped you for Steve?" And he was like, "Oh, yeah, just for a minute." And Tatum was like, "I thought you dumped her for me." And he was like, "I didn't kill anybody." And Billy looks at him and he's like, "Nobody said you did."
I did catch that.
I feel like this whole time Billy's using him because he knows he's dumb. He's not smart. He does whatever Billy wants him to do. And then at the end of it, when he's bleeding out and he's got the phone and he's talking to, which is a fucking great scene when Sydney busts out of the closet in the Ghostface outfit.
Yeah.
But he's like, "Did you really call the cops?" And she's like, "You bet I did." And he's like, "My mom and dad are going to be so mad." That's just who he is. He's a nerd.
I guess you're helping me accept it a little bit more. Okay, sure. He's just a dum-dum, and he's been used as a pawn all throughout.
He has. He's specifically what Billy needed to make the entire thing work. And I think that is why he's so over the top. He's so dumb.
I get that.
it. He's a pawn. He's so easily manipulated. He's so easy to use. And it just plays into Billy's genius, in my opinion.
I could get on board with that. I still hate him, but that's part of the... That's
well, I think you're supposed to... I don't know. A lot of people like him. I don't know. You're supposed to hate him, but I think you disliking him because he is so over the top and so... I don't know. I think the whole party thing was Billy's idea. Billy had Stu throw the party because he knew he was stupid and he would do it. Billy goes back, kills the principal, hangs the principal as another pawn to get all the kids to leave the party. Just as he shows up, now it's down to a very small group of people.
So then who kills Tatum? Because I read that somebody said Billy killed Tatum. Maybe I'm misremembering what I read, but I'm like, Billy was upstairs having sex, so no way.
He shows up after Tatum dies, so in my opinion, Billy is the one that kills Tatum.
Okay.
Because Stu's entertaining everybody, and Billy shows up once all the kids leave to go see the principal hanging at the school. That's when he comes in the door there, and it's just, there's it's Randy's left, Stu's left, Sydney's there, and then Gail and Dewey are out. I think that's when they're looking for the car that they find out in the middle of nowhere, because they almost get hit by the kids leaving.
Yeah, okay. I didn't think that was, because the way that it's cut sort of insinuates that it is on a different timeline, but I see what you're saying, and I can see how that would allow for him to be Tatum's killer then.
Which is another good point. The way they do it, we'll get to that in a minute, but the way they do it, they really don't allow you to realize there's two people until the end, and which I also think is fun to go back and watch. And at this point, I think I have it pretty dialed into who killed who, but to go back and watch it a second time and say, okay, who was here, who killed this person, etc., which I think is fun to do. Of course, there's a huge thread on Reddit of who killed who and who was where when, but again, it just plays into the movie. There's just so many layers to it, right?
Yeah, so many options almost because of the second killer. And I do like how they throw you off like 87 times. Like you're like, oh, is it the dad? Is it the sheriff? Is it Randy? And even Randy says everyone's a suspect. That was one of those moments that I really liked. This super meta moment where he's like, I feel like I was in this scene in the movie store where he's like yelling at Stu. I was really bordering on like, I almost hate this. And then right when he started yelling to the point where everybody turned and looked at him, I was like, okay, I'm back on board. This feels like it's in reality. And his conversation was really good. But I feel like you carry that through the entire movie, and that is intentional, right? Everybody's a suspect. And I liked that.
Exactly. Even at one point, like the principal is even kind of suspicious, right? You're like, this guy's a little weird.
My fourth note is like, this principal is fucking gross. Like, what are you doing touching Sydney's face like a creeper?
Because it really is, at the heart of it, it's a whodunit movie because you don't know, right? Which is what really separates it from the other movies in the genre, the subgenre of slasher genre. You know who they are, why they do what they do. They have a lot of them are supernatural, which I think is the other spooky thing about this, is that these are just two normal kids. And the thing about Ghostface is he gets his ass kicked in every movie. Like they make fun of it in Scary Movie, but like it's pretty factual. Like he's just a normal high school kid that like, yeah, you kick him, he falls down. Not like Jason Voorhees, where if you kick Jason Voorhees, you break your own leg. Like he falls down. Tatum throws beer bottles at him and breaks beer all over him. So that's the other really frightening thing about it is it could be anybody.
I have a few things that I just want to talk shit about that I thought were unrealistic. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Number one. Why are there so many fucking news stations in this supposedly small town? It's like crazy town.
I don't think all of the news stations are in the town. I think because of the town's history with Maureen Prescott and it being a year later from her death, that it probably likely made all of these other news centers flock to that place. Hoping, like Gail Weathers, because and you see it at the jailhouse, I think, where everybody knows Gail. She's like a big celebrity at this point because of the Cotton Weary thing. Everybody's trying to catch that fire. So in my opinion, it's not that Woodsboro has all of those news outlets, that everybody came there and blew this whole thing out of proportion. They didn't blow it out of proportion, but they were coming there because of the potential that, hey, this is a year later. It's probably has something to do with Maureen Prescott.
Okay. I will accept that, and I think that's a good reasoning. So never mind. Check.
Thank you.
Handled. Number two. Here's my second one. How in the fuck? I just don't believe, and maybe this was different in the 90s, but I don't think so, that all of these teenagers are such a fan of this local ass TV anchor that when she shows up to a party, somebody's like, I religiously watch your show. I was like, no way. You're supposed to be like, what, 16 or 17? No fucking way.
Yes. Okay. All right. I'll also argue that she is a big celebrity, a local celebrity. So likely they probably were infatuated with her because she was all over the news based on the Maureen Prescott story.
Okay, I'm not buying this one. Nope. Nope.
Writing the book. I could see it. And back in the 90s, that was big time. And you give a shit
as a 16-year-old where you're...
Look at all the 16-year-olds now in 2021 that are on TikTok and watching all these influencers. Gail Weather was a 1996 pre-TikTok influencer.
I don't buy.
Guaranteed.
No, you're not. No, you're not convincing me. No way. No. Because she's like an old person news anchor.
She's not that old.
She is to them, even though they don't look like it. Let's be real. All these people playing teenagers are like 27. They're like in their late 20s. So you think like, yeah, they're close in age, but they're actually not. They're
very old.
They're supposed to be 16, 17, maybe 18, you know? And Courtney Cox is
like when,
40,
yeah.
35, 40.
Oh, stop it. Was she that old?
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying like to have a career in that where you're the main like TV anchor, you had to have put some time in. You know what I mean? I'm not saying she looks old or anything. I'm just saying like, or even that 40 is old because it's not. I'm just saying there's a major age gap where you would not be impressed by a local TV anchor.
I think the thing is she's supposed to be young, she's supposed to be attractive, and she's supposed to be very cutthroat. Like, she got to the top because of the Cotton Weary thing. So that's how she made herself famous, basically. That's what she wants to be, is famous. And she doesn't, if you watch her, her outfits are, like, you can pick her out of the crowd because she doesn't dress like the rest of the news people at all of these places. She stands out. She's clearly the local celebrity, so I could see why all these people are infatuated with her, to be honest. In the 90s, what else did they have to watch? They had to watch local TV. They didn't have the internet.
They're not watching shit. They're just like hanging out with their friends, you know? Partying, drinking.
Watching Gale Weathers.
No, I don't buy it. You've not convinced me on this one.
Okay, all right. She's a pre-TikTok influencer, I'm telling you.
Okay. I disagree, but sure. And then I wonder, all these fucking kids are in mansions of houses. I mean, I'm not saying that it's unrealistic because obviously you do have like upper echelons of teenage groups hanging out. But I was sort of like, I don't know, I want to see a tiny house or something. Like, give me something average rather than these.
I don't think the Riley house was super over the top. That's Tatum and Dewey's house. But I agree with you actually on that one, because in one of our episodes, I was like, I don't know what Sydney's dad does, but like, sign me up, because like,
right,
I'm in.
That guy's got like a 3-story deck. I'm like, what's happening? This deck is more square footage than my apartment. Like, what is happening? Jesus.
Well, I mean, they are in the hills of California, though. So, like...
That's true.
I don't know. I think all those houses are big out there. You overpay.
Yeah. And she falls out of the window into a boat. I was like, for a half second, I was mad about it. And then I was like, nah, that makes sense. I was like, no, this is a fucking mansion. If you're going to have a party, you're going to have a party at the guy with the big house's house, right? Like, I had friends when I was in high school, we didn't have a ton of money, but like, I had friends that had money. You partied at those houses, right? The big houses. Not me. We were like, where are we going to party? Oh, we're going to party in the one person in our grade who has their own apartment. You know what I mean? Like, but of course, that's like a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. Yeah, we didn't do that. We just waited till parents went out of town and did it at those houses. But again, you wanted to go to the big houses. There's more room. Of course. Yeah, of course you want to. And I feel like I got the opportunity to do that a couple times, but like mostly it was fucking underground. Our friend who was the first of our friends who was like emancipated or whatever. And she had her own apartment. We were like, hell yeah, we're going to her house. Like, okay, that's fair. Anyway, but I don't see the issue with it. There's kids in school that have those big houses, those rich families, and that's ideally where the party probably happened at. They have them. Yeah, I just was like, okay, though. Like, this is fucking over the top. How are they going to shoot this movie in a little cottage? They got to have the big old house so they can make it work, right? You know, 'cause sometimes I like that, though. I'm like, oh, it's nice to see something a little bit more realistic, smaller scale. You got to work with what you got. I like it. It's scrappy. I think you might be nitpicking at this point. I am nitpicking for sure. Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. All right. I'll admit it. Okay. Yeah. I can't wait to hear the next one. If that's the one you just led with. I had a series of 3.
Okay, then I will, even though I'm kind of advocating for the movie at this point, I feel like I will throw one out to you. The part I dislike the most about this movie happens after the curfew, when you have Ghostface walking through the woods outside of Sydney's house. He's like watching her and Tatum. Remember, he's like over in the woods there watching them. They go into town to get food to bring to the party, and he's like walking through the grocery store with the Ghostface outfit on.
Yeah.
I'm like, eh.
Okay.
So the whole town knows there's this Ghostface killer out there stalking these kids, and you're going to walk through the Walmart with the outfit on?
I accept that. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Yeah.
That's the only part that I really didn't care for. I'm like, we could do without this. It doesn't add anything to the storyline. Seth actually brought up a good point. He was almost like it doesn't fit in with the story whatsoever. Like, why are we doing this? So that's the only thing I have that I dislike about it is it's a little unrealistic. Not to mention, like, if Sydney looked over at that point in time, Ghostface is like right there in the trees watching her.
You're right that you could totally lose it and it wouldn't make a difference. Like, yeah, it is inconsequential. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you adding to the list. And
I'm not here just to say the whole movie's great. Every movie has a little scene here or there. I don't want people to think I'm biased or anything.
Right. We got to talk about the flaws, but also the good things. Okay. Sorry. I feel like I've gone down a couple of my points. What else do you have?
You said you had some references. So I like the meta tone of the movie. Like I said, I think that Wes Craven's New Nightmare kind of was the trial run for this. But we talked about it earlier, but if you aren't paying attention or if you continue to watch the movie over, every time you pick up on a different reference, I know you said you had a bunch of them, but I think that's also a selling point of the movie is the fact that they're able to throw all of these. Obviously, some of them are very obvious when he says, when he quotes Psycho at the end of it, and he says Anthony Perkins Psycho, right? Like, obviously, you know that's Psycho, but there's so many that are like under the radar that I thought were really good. So I'd like to hear actually what the ones you have are to see if I caught any of them.
I can run through them. And again, I don't think this is all of them, but I got these from IMDb. So at the beginning of the movie, when Casey's parents come home to find something is wrong, her father tells her mother to go to the Mackenzies, which is the same thing Laurie told Lindsay and Tommy to do in Halloween, of which this movie contains many references, is what I said.
Mm-hmm. Billy Loomis, Dr. Loomis.
Dr. Loomis, of course. Yes, the names are all very
obvious.
Yeah, good connection. Skeet Ulrich was cast as Billy Loomis, partly because of his resemblance to Johnny Depp, who was in A Nightmare on Elm Street.
And he climbs through Nev Campbell's window, which so does Johnny Depp in A Nightmare on Elm Street and Dawson's Creek, right?
Okay, didn't know the Dawson's Creek reference, but yes.
Joey Potter, she climbs through Dawson's window.
Okay. I haven't seen it.
Not a big Dawson's Creek fan, huh?
I've never watched any of it. No clue.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Nothing.
It's all right.
It's all right. Okay, so I also have, it's mentioned near the end of the film that they used corn syrup dyed red in blood in several horror movies. And the production crew actually did use corn syrup dyed red, which I thought was an interesting little cute thing. Like, nice. Stayed true to that.
Really, well, he licks his fingers too, so it's like, oh, I hope that is corn syrup.
I hope that's sweet. Yeah. I also was like, what a fucking mess. I actually would be like, if I were somebody who was in charge of this production, somebody be like, let's use corn syrup. I'd be like, let's fucking not actually though, because can you imagine?
It'd be so sticky.
Yeah. That's not fun. What if we get it on the equipment, y'all? That'd be my talking point.
That's true. How about at the end? So Billy's got this actual corn syrup all over him, right? And he's like cutting the pillow with the feathers going everywhere and they're like sticking all over him.
That makes sense.
That sounds miserable to me.
Yeah. No, thank you. There also, and I know Felicia is going to love this, several Stephen King references. So again, like we're talking about, the corn syrup is referenced in the movie by Billy as a callback to Carrie. Sydney wears a jean jacket like Randall Flagg famously wears in The Stand.
Okay.
When Principal Himbrie's body is found and Randy tells the group of movie watchers who go see it, one of them yells, "Hi ho, Silver, away," which is a phrase from It by Bill. And the scene where Sydney is running from Ghostface after he kills Billy, kills in quotation marks, and runs through the house is similar to when Shelley is running from the ghosts in the Overlook Hotel in The Shining. I don't know if I picked up on that one.
Interesting. I didn't catch the "Hi Ho Silver Away," honestly.
I had subtitles on because I can't hear anything. And so I have to read all of my movies now. And so that was I wouldn't have caught it otherwise.
Interesting. I've never caught that one. I'm going to have to watch. Obviously, we're watching him again for the projector thing, but yeah, I have to check it out. I've never caught that one.
Yeah. And then I thought this one was fun because they said like there's a subtle joke when Randy is shouting at the television for Jamie Curtis to turn around while watching Halloween.
Yes.
Not only because the killer is behind him, but because his name is Jamie as an actor. So
Yes.
he's telling himself to turn around. I liked that.
Brilliant.
That was fun.
Brilliant. And one really cool thing is during that party scene when it actually happens during several scenes. So they're watching the movie Halloween. And if you pay close attention, the score for Scream is actually the Halloween movie. So they've basically taken it, amplified it, and the same score they're using in the Halloween movie for the scenes in Halloween, they're using for Scream.
I did read that and I wasn't like quite sure what it meant. I think I'm going to have to go back and listen again just really intently to the score and the music that they used several excerpts from Halloween. So, yeah.
It's right around that same Randy time where he's telling himself, Jamie, turn around. But it also happens, I believe, when Billy and Stu are looking for Sydney and she's in the closet in the Ghostface outfit.
Okay.
Which I guess we could also say is a little unrealistic. Like, when does she have time to put this outfit on?
That's one of those things that I'm willing to toss. Like, whatever. It's cool enough. It's cool enough that I don't care. Like,
I love it. I love it. She bursts out of the closet with the Ghostface costume on. She stabs him with a freaking umbrella, which would be horrible.
Yes.
And then stabs him again with the umbrella.
And it was good. She just used what she had available to her, you know? And I love that.
That's true. Yep.
I do want to say, this is the other thing I mentioned earlier. There's a couple things that in the process of doing the research made me really sort of like this movie more. And the next couple things I'm going to tell you is the other thing. It seems like making this movie was a fucking blast. And I love when I feel like people had a lot of fun on set. That's super fun. Again, that's something that I feel like Rob Zombie does well, and that all of the people that work with and continue to work with Rob Zombie have in common is like, we're just having a great fucking time doing this thing. Right. So again, I'm using the party scene as kind of a segue here. But the party scene near the end of the film runs 42 minutes long. It was shot over the course of 21 days, from the time the sun set to the time it rose. And after it wrapped, the crew had t-shirts made that said, "I survived scene 118. And the cast and crew jokingly called it the longest night in horror history. And I just think that's fun.
Wow. I bet they had a blast. I feel like this cast probably got along really well, and I bet this movie was a lot of fun to film, honestly.
I mean, how could it not? It does seem like the chemistry, like you're saying, it comes through. It seems like they had a lot of fun. And even Rose McGowan said that it was her favorite filming experience in her career. And she still has the Scary Movie wine bottle with the wine still in it that they received at the wrap party. So it's like, what kind of fucking super fun time did you have that you're like, I treasure this and it's my favorite experience? It had to have been the fucking best. Like, no one's an asshole. No one's showing up drunk as hell. No one's ruining it and being like a big egotistical maniac for everybody else. That is great. And it really pushed the needle for me, honestly, in terms of like appreciating this movie.
I don't know. I've never filmed the movie, obviously. Like I said, we're not genre experts by any means, but from what I've read online and seen interviews and stuff, filming movies is not fun. So to have them say that this was the, Rose McGowan, who's been in a ton of movies, to say that that experience was so great, like, that speaks volumes to me, because you look at certain movies and this isn't like a super action-packed movie where they're doing a bunch of stunts, etc. It's pretty chill for the most part, but still, I mean, doing the same thing over and over and over again is exhausting. So I can only imagine.
Yes, to what you're saying. I mean, I've never made like a feature film length movie or anything like that, but I have been in video production for a while now. And it can be very taxing, but at the same time, it can be really, really fun. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to go into it, is because it can be not so serious. There's this element of like, it's fun, we're on set, we're making shit happen, we're solving problems, and we're all here to get a good final result. And like, that is the best. When you have a bunch of people who are all coming together to like, do a common, like, meet a common goal, like, we're going to make a cool fucking movie. Like, I feel like you can just feel that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that that's the other note I have, is that like there's so many comedic undertones to this movie, but yeah, it's still scary. You have your jump scares. It's not overly gory, honestly. You have that one scene at the beginning that, the guts fall out and you see Drew Barrymore hanging from a tree. But for the most part, and then you get to the end, but even all that blood all over Billy is supposed to be corn syrup. It's not even really supposed to be blood. So it's not that gory. I just think they really do a great job of balancing all that, because I think with some horror comedies, they lean one way or the other. But I think this movie does a really great job of teetering the line. So I think that's another great thing that they did, was that they were able to, it's funny, you laugh, the characters are a little goofy, but when it comes down to the scary scenes, they really are scary.
Actually, something that I wrote down that I didn't know is that the use of caller ID increased more than threefold after the release of this film, which I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, exactly. And like, when you think about it, it's kind of what I was talking about earlier with that first scene, is like, it was scary. Like somebody lurking out in the dark, like, that is so scary to me, that he was watching her through those windows. Because Seth made a comment. He was like, who in the hell doesn't have curtains on all of their windows? Or like, why don't you have blinds? Like, that house at the beginning is completely open, but at the time, like, why would you put curtains and blinds on your windows? And like, nobody's gonna mess with you. Well, now, they will, like, right? So it changed thinking. You can't go back in time.
I can't. If I could, I would. I would.
I wouldn't.
Just for this.
No way.
Not for anything else. I'd just be like,
okay,
little tiny. Nothing else is important. Don't try to change anything. No big worldwide issues, nothing. Just listen. Watch, scream. I know you're scared. Do it anyway. That's what I would change. And then I'd come back to now.
And we'd finish the podcast. But I got to tell you, I think that whoever told you that it was the scariest movie they'd ever seen and their body got flipped inside out, they probably legitimately thought that, to be honest with you.
Listen, just so you know, this person also told me that I had to get pregnant before I was 16 or else I'd die. So,
okay,
not a great
I take back what I said.
Not a
Why
great
are you hanging out with this person?
It was one of those people that, like, it wasn't actually my friend. It was just like my mom's friend's daughter. Lord. So I'm just like, you know what I mean? Like, forced to be around them constantly. And she actually wasn't great. Like, there was many times like this that
she wasn't great.
She scared the shit out of me. She was like a good 3 years older or something than me, so that wasn't a good dynamic. It's like,
no,
okay, she was a very bad influence actually, like, overall.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't listen to her, honestly. So I can see why you didn't watch Scream. You didn't get pregnant before 16. A lot of this is making sense. I feel like you made a good call, even though you missed the boat on Scream. It did change the trajectory of your life.
That's probably true. That is probably true. Yeah.
There you go. I'm happy for you.
Thank you. Do you have anything else note-wise that you want to mention before you rate it?
All right, let's see here. Let me just make sure we covered everything. I think we talked about everything I had to talk about. I'm hoping that I really influenced your rating on this movie. I see I did not.
Josh, what are you going to rate this movie? I'm going to kick it to you first.
Okay, so again, we've done this movie twice on the HMC. The first time was our very first episode, and we were like, how do we rate these movies? We didn't really know at all what we were doing. So I think I gave it like a 4.2 or something at first because I was like, well, I don't want to give out a 5 because like 5s are like near and dear to my heart. But then I talked everybody into doing the movie again just because I wanted to correct my score. So I'm going to mimic my score from the last time we did this movie because this is probably my favorite movie of all time. I'm going to give it a 5. So I think it is a perfect movie. And I don't give out a lot of 5s. I've only given out 2 on the HMC to Scream and Rob Zombie's Halloween because they are perfect movies.
Okay. All right. Nobody kill me. I'm going to give this a 3.5. And I'm out here just tossing out the 3.5s. That's the last 2 ratings I've given. So we're 3 for 3 now. But that's not a bad score. I want you to know, Josh, because I gave High Tension and Raw. And what else did I give it? Wrong Turn, the new one. Liked it on that same level. Spiral, the new one. Wicker Man. Enjoyed that movie.
Whoa. Nicolas Cage Wicker Man or original Wicker Man?
The original.
Okay. I think, honestly, based on our discussion, I feel like our ratings reflect what we both said during our discussion. So
that's true.
I'm not upset. Honestly, I feel like having not experienced it, I won't say when it came out because I didn't experience it right when it came out, but I think that really is a detriment to it because I feel like the people that really, no offense, appreciate this movie are the ones that it really got them into horror. It changed the horror genre for them, which I'm one of those people, obviously. I'm looking around my podcast studio right now. I have the actual, Abby got me the Scream script from our anniversary, so I have it over here. I've got Ghostface everywhere, but that's not your thing, right? So if it's not something that you were, I don't want to say raised on, I wasn't raised on Scream, but like my horror love came from Scream. Like I love Ghostface. I love the idea of the movie. I think it's very self-aware. I think it's very intelligent. You unfortunately didn't have that experience. So it's different for you. So I can't be upset. I think you're wrong, but I can't be upset with your opinion because it's your opinion, it's your experience.
Right. And just everybody's thing is different. Like for me, that'd be like Silent Hill. If I'm going to buy merch from a thing, it's going to be like Silent Hill, Black Christmas, Child's Play, probably. The Descent, maybe. You know, like those are the Audition. Those are like my top favorite movies.
Right.
And so it's just different for everybody. And, you know, we can respect that.
We can. That's one of the cool things about this community is that Horror Movie Cruise started, I think, last summer sometime. But like we've met so many cool people with differing opinions, but it's never like aggressive, right? There's been a few that have been but those people tend to get weeded out, right? Because it's different. Like everybody has differing opinions, but this community honestly is so unique in the fact that we like to watch fucked up shit, honestly. Like stuff that happens in horror movies is not something you'd want to actually see happen in real life. But at the same time, we've like connected with all these people that like the same thing and are very open-minded to everybody else's opinions. You listen to why one person likes something that you don't like, and they may or may not sway your opinion. But at the same time, you don't stop talking to them.
I agree. And I think with horror podcasting too, there's just such a, like you're saying, a low level of gatekeeping. It's like whatever you're into, you're part of the community. whether you hate certain types, shun subgenres or whatever, like you're part of this group and it's just awesome that way. So I agree. And that's, I think, what is so great about the community. I think we all feel that way being in it. So, yeah.
100%.
Well, anyway, thank you, Josh, for being so great on this podcast. I appreciate you bringing this movie and dealing with me being neutral about it, which is just as bad as hating it. I feel like this is a very divisive movie. So
no, if you hated it, we would have a completely different discussion. But
yeah, that's true. Do you want to just kind of give everybody a reminder of where to find you and your guys' podcast?
Yeah, so we're on all social media platforms at Horror Movie Crew Podcast. You can find us on Apple. I think that's where, honestly, if you're going to listen, go to Apple because we get a lot more credit if you listen to us on Apple. I don't know why that is. I can't figure it out, but it's true. If you don't have an Apple device, you can listen to us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, basically anywhere they have podcasts, we're on there. Rate and review us if you don't mind. That really helps. We've got, so if you go to Instagram, that's really our hub. That's where we have all of our stuff. There's a link tree in Instagram. You can get to our Patreon, which if you choose to support the podcast that way, we greatly appreciate it. We've got extra bonus episodes on Patreon that we do every month. And yeah, so that's really, you can find us anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Horror Movie Crew Podcast. There's like 87, 88 episodes out now. So there's a lot to catch up on.
I don't even know how you guys are pumping out episodes. I feel like we've been pumping out episodes. We're only at, this will be 68. So we're like 20 behind y'all. That's crazy.
That's okay. There's 3 of us. There's only 2 of you, so it makes sense.
That's true. We'll go with that.
Hey, I'm here for you. Whatever you need.
For us, so reminders, next week's movie, we're going to be talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street. And we're going to be talking about it with the gals from Rocks, Paper, Salt, which if you've listened to the last couple episodes, we're doing a partnership with them. And they are doing a custom cocktail kit for October that is based on the movie. So you can get a kit that you can make your own twist on an old fashioned, which is called the Sleepwalker. So go to their website. It's rockspapersalt.com. And you can pre-order those. And you can also order them all the way out through October. So definitely check that out. And Josh, I feel like you were going to say something.
I'm just saying, why wait until the end of October to order your rock, paper, salt drink, right?
Exactly.
So you're going to be out doing trick-or-treat stuff. Everybody knows trick-or-treat stuff is not fun when you're an adult, okay? You got to monitor kids. You got to watch stuff. So why wouldn't you want to have a little rock, paper, salt Sleepwalker in your cup while you're walking around? You can get a Yeti. You can a Tervis. Put it in there. Once the kids go to bed, you can watch Nightmare on Elm Street. Drink a little more rock, paper, salt, Sleepwalker. Why wouldn't you do it, guys? Come on. Don't wait till the last minute. Order it now. You'll have it in time for Halloween. I got mine on order. You should get yours on order.
That's
get
right.
your rock, paper, salt, Sleepwalker mixed drink. I think, you get like 4 of them or something? I was looking.
You do. Yeah, you get enough
See?
stuff to do.
Why wouldn't you do it?
You're also going to get snacks, everybody. You're going to get some Freddy snacks. You're going to get some fast-acting stay awake pill candy snacks. You're going to get a Spotify playlist. It's a whole vibe. It's great. Very excited. We've ordered ours. We're going to have it on the podcast. Go check it out.
You did a great job.
You did a great job. Thank you, Josh, for hyping that up. This was a commercial that we just had. We should cut that together.
You can put it on your Instagram. Just cut it up and make me not slur so much and you'll be fine.
Okay, I can do that. Okay, so for us, you can find us on social media everywhere at 2 Chicks and a Horror Flick, although Instagram is really our hub. Unless you go to Twitter, it's 2ChicksHF. And you can also support and engage with us on Patreon. And we also have a Discord that kind of loops in. We have free tiers and paid tiers from the Patreon. So you can search us over on there. And you can also rate us and give us a review. Just like Josh said, again, it's like for whatever reason on Apple Podcasts, it seems to be the highest just because that's where most people are listening. So if you're listening on there, give us a rating and review, or wherever you're listening to the show. That's great. Wherever you are, tell us. Give us a rating and review. Unless it's really terrible, please don't. Go somewhere else. Listen to somebody else. Anyway, thank you again, Josh, for the 18th time. You're great. It was great having you on. And we'll be back again next week. We hope you guys have such a good night with no nightmares.